the previous expressions of Capricorn, I'll just look at those, began with accomplishment, continued with wisdom. Let's be a quicker way of doing this. And then devotion. The fourth is a reconciliation. No, the fourth is fortitude. The fifth is reconciliation. And we come to mastery. So these words really indicate the Capricorn goes for it and takes life seriously. You know, fortitude, mastery, accomplishment, they're not trivial words, are they? They're somebody who's getting on with it. And I think that's the first thing for us to just acknowledge about Capricorn, is that there's a determination to succeed. The image of the goat is quite interesting in Capricorn. Have any of us had an experience with a real life goat? Anybody? Yeah. It's something, isn't it? It really is on you. You know, you get a surprise. I decided that I didn't want my goat to enter this big tent. I was putting on a camp in a marquee, and it was raining, and the goat wanted to hide in the marquee, and I didn't want the goat shitting in my tent. So we had a battle that lasted a long time. I mean, it's like 20 minutes or something. And I was absolutely certain the goat would not enter the marquee, and the goat was equally certain that it would. I'd never come across that kind of determination before in my life. It's very impressive. Is that similar to your experiences with goats, people?
Yeah, my mother is a Capricorn, so I have to put up with her, and it's exactly what she's saying. She's going for it, no matter if she's right or wrong. Huh? Yeah.
I've got a tremendous sense of admiration for this bloody animal. It takes a lot to out stubborn me. You know, I do pretty well when it comes to stubbornness, but the goat certainly made a fool of me, I think, in the end. So we are looking at that type of quality in Capricorn. And when it comes to mastery, we have a sense of overcoming all the obstacles. So Capricorn 26 is the beginning of that theme. And we have this very interesting kind of image of a water sprite and dancing to the rhythm of life. It's kind of not quite what you'd expect within this hard, down-to-earth ambition of Capricorn to have this image of a water sprite in this position as well. But I think we have to understand that you don't get to be a master of the earth plane unless you have some subtle awareness of what else is going on. Capricorns are not only successful in the earth plane realm, they also represent a high spiritual principle as well. There's a devotional quality to Capricorn. They, like a goat, a Capricorn type of person can live in a very austere way. They don't need much, typically, you know. And when it comes to mastery, it's a requirement, really, that we don't allow our needs to get in the way. So you have that sense of the arising of a certain consciousness that is lighter because we don't need things that make us heavy and earthy. So this is the end of mastery, you know, Capricorn. And mastery is the end product of all that fortitude and accomplishment. They do that for a reason, and the reason, of course, for a goat is to get to the top of the mountain, to stand on the top of earthly reality. And we have three images of Capricorn, not only the goat. Do you know the other two by any chance? There are two other beasts associated with Capricorn.
Taurus, maybe?
I'm sorry?
Taurus?
I'm not sure what you said.
Taurus?
Taurus.
Of course.
Taurus.
No, I'm asking for symbols of Capricorn. that
I'm sorry.
associated- Yeah, the goat isn't the only animal associated with Capricorn, and there are two others.
The sea goat. The,
Well, the sea goat is the goat that we're talking
oh,
about.
that is the goat. Okay, right.
But it's a really interesting point. It's not actually a goat. In our archaic teachings, it's the sea goat. And that, of course, is the opposite polarity. The Cancer kind of hint of the sea having a tidal realm to it. But no, it's there are three levels of expression of Capricorn, and the lowest level is the crocodile. So here you have the image of the businessman who eats up all the competition, absolutely ruthless, primal, that kind of level. The goat is an improvement upon that, but still in the beastly realm. And the goat gets to the top of the mountain, and at the top of the mountain it flies, and it becomes its third image is the unicorn. The unicorn is an image of Capricorn. So we're moving into that realm with this sixth expression of Capricorn. And we begin with 26, the water sprite, dancing to the rhythm of life, allowing yourself to respond to the feelings of the mysteries. Free spirits are masters of their own experience. And here we have it. If you're into mastery, then actually you're free. You're free to do what you choose to do, and that's why the water sprite is the image here. We can tune into the subtle and so find ourselves to be just one part of the great mystery. Dancing to the rhythm of life. Water links all things on earth as it moves through its cycle of change from ocean to cloud to rain to river. In a way, our feelings do that too, as love of God, as emotions, as love of life and all beings. What we study as occultists includes this essential life rhythm, and most importantly, the awareness that all things are metaphors for all other things. There is but one thing going on, and we are all part of it, sounding its note and dancing its feeling dance, all connected by sharing the source of inspiration for our own dance. So does that describe you very well, Carolina?
Water sprite. Yes, you know what it really does is it better captures my. I've always had trouble relating to Capricorn, like kind of traditional descriptions of Capricorn, honestly. Like I'm not at all materialistic. I'm really not that ambitious in kind of like the typical sense. Totally not traditional at all, you know. And when I first read about the water sprite, I was like, yeah, that for some reason really resonates. There's something about it. Like I've always had this philosophy of just, you follow life, and then like when it's time for a new door to appear, it'll appear, and then you walk through that door, and then you'll walk through another one. So like for me, it's been much less of that like kind of mountain goat climbing a mountain image of how I see my life progress, and rather more of one of like kind of going
unicorn.
to
The unicorn, right?
I'd love to. How wonderful. If only. I mean, I do. There's always been a strong kind of spiritual sensibility about me without, having been brought up by total atheists and like had no religion in my life. There's always been this sense that I've had also like things happen when it's time. So for me, I relate incredibly to that description.
Okay. How about you, Loic? That's your North Node, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, if we understand the North Node as a soul, what I have to embrace almost is really has to do with the mysteries of life, and I think that it goes well with my journey and how I rely a lot on the mysticals to find the trust and the faith in everything that I cannot necessarily see from my physical eye, but I rely upon the mystical realm and to create my reality. So it definitely is part of what I'm here to master.
Okay. It's great to have a Sabian symbol. I should think, Carolina, for your sun sign. That's so wonderful, isn't it? It's a really nice symbol, isn't it?
It's really lovely. I gotta say, makes me it just also makes you just think about the depth of the. Well, I mean, it happens to me whenever I study the Sabian symbols of any sign, but like it just makes me think about Capricorn in such a different way, you know, than the way it's traditionally stereotyped as well.
Yeah, that's exactly the point, I think, of our studies of the Sabian symbols, that we do have to look at the signs in a much more imaginative and understanding, subtle way. When we're looking at Capricorn, we have to get the sum total of all of its bits and pieces, and so that's the main thrust of it. These are the descriptions. But if you look at the Sabian symbols level of detail, you can look at real nuances, and that's what we're doing here. And Capricorn does have this. It's because of its commitment to work to overcome the issues that it has in life. You know, Capricorn has as much emotional process as anyone, but it just puts the job first, and you know, other people allow their emotions to cloud their ambition and their purpose. Capricorn just doesn't. He kind of gets on with the job no matter what the feelings are, and then that is a requirement, really, of a committed spiritual seeker. You know, it's a process that we have to go through. Okay, so let's look at the second of this expression. 27, a mountain pilgrimage. Seekers must for a time move away from their busy lives to seek peace. Retreat and pilgrimage. The seeker of realization must hold to the path with resolute steadfastness. Even though we love the dance of life, the sensuality of touch, the thrill of engagement and the risk of dangerous conflict, we also love the music that makes us dance. For the pilgrim, that love is the stronger force for a while and causes them to walk away from the busy marketplace to find a mountaintop somewhere so that they can have a fuller experience of the great musician. We see here the image of a monk, really, or a pilgrim, or that kind of person that moves away from the everyday and ordinary in order to make a very clear statement. I'm going to do a lot of work. I'm going to do my job here is to find God, and to find God you have to seek God, and you have to do that away from the marketplace. And it's that music that makes me dance best. You know, the sound of music of the spheres rather than the rock and roll in the marketplace. And in one sense, maybe this is a little controversial, but in one sense, going on retreat, it kind of takes you out of the rhythm of life in one sense, because each retreat is much, much more like previous retreats than anything else. If you've done retreat, you know, you'll realize that when you go in London, there was this little room. If somebody saw you walking in with the big suitcase, oh, you're going into the little room, and we would do our retreats in this little room. And as soon as they closed the door, that was it for weeks and weeks and weeks. You wouldn't see anything, you know, of real life. And it was not like nothing else except for the last time you did it last year, you know. And there's no rhythm of life in this experience. And that's what the rhythm, the retreat experience does. It breaks the rhythm of your life, because rhythm is a very positive way of indicating how we change from one thing to another, and you know, the sense of moving in time with nature. But in fact, of course, if somebody lines up with the rhythm of life, the strong likelihood is that habit will take over. most of us are actually rhythmic by habit. We get up at the same time of day, not because actually that's the natural thing to do. That would mean that we would change what time we would get up because of the sunrise and so on, probably. You know, I don't think birds wake up at the same time of the day, do they? They wake up with the sun. So the rhythms that we have are actually imposed, and they become habits. And to break those habits, you need to do something such as going on a pilgrimage or a retreat. How many of us have actually done that? Have you done spiritual retreats? Anyone here? No? Ooh.
Yeah.
Well done, Richard. How long did
I
you
would
go?
love to, but I've never done it. Not yet.
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident to say you'd love to a lot more beforehand than during the middle of it. Retreats are
Maybe.
great, looking forward to them and looking back on them, but in the middle is like for me, I mean, some people like it a lot. It's just not my thing. But it's a wonderful experience. So what have you done, Richard? What's the longest one you've done?
5 days with an arrivals day, 3 full days in the middle, and a leaving day.
Yeah, what we call that in Sufism, that's called a holiday.
Yeah.
I was disdained. I was looked down on as a pathetic wannabe who couldn't quite make it because I could only do 21-day retreats, you know. I know it was like I was so proud of myself, and nobody else thought I was doing any good at all because it was so small. And the thing is that it takes a lot to break the habits that we've spent years and years and years building up. And you know, the mountain pilgrimage, that would take longer than 21 days. If you did the walks, what's that walk called in Spain?
Camino del Santiago.
Yeah, have anybody done anything like that? Long retreat walk?
I've done part of the Camino, and I've done a lot of trekking, like 5-day trips, 10-day trips, that kind of thing.
It's good. Trekking really good. Yeah, and the Camino is a version of that, of course, but with a bit of sacredness thrown in. But trekking,
There's a lot of pubs everywhere, which is really different than like when you go walking in the States for 5 days where you're just in trees. And the Camino de Santiago was like, this is great, you know, stop at restaurants. It didn't feel nearly as spiritual as like walking the Appalachian Trail or something like here.
They're all on your side. All the cafe owners give you twice as much food as you could really eat. You know, they want to support the retreatants, the pilgrims. But yeah, if you actually get into walking as a spiritual practice, it's really quite profound. You know, we were born to walk, really, and the fact that we stopped walking when we invented agriculture as a species, that was the beginning of the end, I think, for our species. You know, we ought to walk, really. If a baby won't go to sleep, you know, pick him up and take him for a walk, basically. And instead, they put him in a car now, don't they? But that rhythm of walking is very good for us, you know. So can we say how this contrasts the first one? The water sprite is contrasted by the pilgrim. Pretty clear, isn't it? Because we're looking.
Can I ask something about this symbol? Because it does give me some sort of image of sacrifice, as in you wave something, you abandon something, or you make a choice to leave something behind, even if it's for a little time. And the connection with the previous symbol, the water sprite is resolute. I mean, it's water flowing, yes, but it must follow its path. So this is something quite, you own your path. This is what I want to do. So it kind of gives me a strong direction in what you are doing. Is that it?
I think you've joined the two images together rather well there, and there is the contrast in that one's a lot more watery and the other's a lot more earthy. The pilgrim's really grounded, and yet they're both on a path. You're quite right. One's trusting the rhythm of nature to direct it, and the other's got a goal. A pilgrim and a retreatant, they both have a goal, which the water sprite does not.
And there's like a commitment, yeah, like to the second one that there isn't in the water sprite, right? That kind of steadfast.
That's right. I mean, it's saying, okay, I can dance with the rhythm of the life, but on the other hand, I still want to do this, and I'm going to do it. You know, the Capricorn comes in there and names this his ambition as in service to God, but it's still ambition in a way, isn't it? It's still very result oriented. Our dearly beloved Capricorn usually is that. So the third degree in this expression is 28, the large aviary. We need to train ourselves to find intuitive clues and signs by expecting them. Awareness of spiritual messages. For the seeker, life can have a very simple directedness, overcoming struggles repeatedly and enduringly until we've reached the goal, realization. It seems unattainable and almost fanciful that we could ever actually reach the mountaintop. Yet the day comes when we do. It is inevitable if we stick at it long enough. And then the peak experience that we first had on reaching the top is replicated over and over. The peak becomes a plateau, and somehow we lose the thrill of attainment, yet we find ourselves flooded with many realizations, the inner voices of spirit. We have learned to hear clearly. So awareness of signs and subtle metaphors in life. So this is your Mercury, Anna.
Yes, I have a hard time understanding this symbol, to be honest, because when I picture a large aviary, I only listen to noise, much noise and a lot of movement, and it's hectic and chaotic, and so it's kind of nice to hear that the challenge is to find to extract some meaning or something to make sense out of that noise. But to be honest, I only listen to the noise.
That's good. I think that's the point, is that within the noise, within that apparent patternless cacophony, that chaos, there are hidden messages. And I think the key to this is we need to train ourselves to find intuitive clues and signs by expecting them.
Yeah, that's how we find, how we extract the
you look for it, then you'll find
important part. Yeah.
So there is a sense of creating that goes along with that. If you're expecting something, then you kind of make it happen. That's how we create our experiences in life. We expect certain things to be in a certain way. But here we're saying that the highly developed mastery person is expecting spiritual messages and having awareness of them. With Mercury there, you'd expect that to be something comprehensible to you. Would you say that you have received spiritual messages?
Yes, I just don't see the connection with a large aviary because I don't know. It just sounds very noisy. But yes, that's true regarding my Mercury. Yes, yes, it ends up.
So you're saying you have received the spiritual messages. That would have been within a background of confusing messages which were not for you and not spiritual, wouldn't it?
I just happen to sometimes find some gems within everyday life, not necessarily a lot of chaos or noise, but yes.
Well, I think the image is that the large aviary is everyday life, and then the superabundance of messages, the bird song is just too many messages to distinguish what on earth's going on. If there's one bird, you'd know what melody they were using, but if it's many birds, you can't work that out.
Yeah.
But somebody with this degree does work it out. They somehow manage to tune in to focus on one little detail and focus their attention on that and read that, focusing on the meaningful detail within a superabundance of information.
Yes, yes, it's true about me. It is true.
In fact, it's inherent within your occupation, presumably.
Yes, that as well. Yes, I do searches and technical searches, and I do extract meaning from those searches. But I do also I avoid these environments where there's a lot of commotion and noise. That's natural in me. I sometimes have to put up with them. I am capable of enduring, but they are really, really very hard for me to be there for a long time, and it takes me forever then to recover from that exposure. So this image of a large aviary, so it's kind of, it's making me and I can only see the, can you imagine the amount of droppings from those sorry, that's a very clear image in my head.
So we see the issues that Capricorn have to overcome. This compulsion to look for the worst in any situation. But here's an special exception to that, where you're actually finding the best in any situation, despite the bird shit, you know.
Yeah, I try at least.
How does this compare to the previous two degrees? This should be the reconciling principle. Can we find this as an expression of the reconciliation of the first two?
I would have guessed that at the end of your pilgrimage, you find what you were looking for, even though it's been a long path. You've encountered many pubs on the way, all sorts of interesting people, and still you managed to go through all of that and still reach your goal.
Yeah. It's also the case that most of what happens on retreat in detail is insignificant. It's a part of building something up so that you get that very special message. And in my experience, I have done a lot of retreats, and I've got maybe two memories, maybe three, you know, over a 20-year period of doing retreats. Two things really stand out as being why I did retreat, you know, and the rest, it just doesn't matter. If they're supporting this one thing that happened, that's fine. I had this kind of breakthrough, a moment of realization, and that was what I remember. That's the message that I got, and it took a long time to get it. But yeah, it does reconcile quite well. I think that interpretation is great, Anna. So we move on to the 29th degree of Capricorn, which is a woman reading tea leaves. This is very often associated with the method by which we grasp this principle of mastery in this case. We may see the signs, and yet we need also to know what they mean. The interpretation of spiritual messages, as above, so below, all is connected to and mirrored by all else. It becomes trite to the occultist as a concept, but to the realized being, it is their main purpose to see beneath form, facts, feelings, and fear. These are all aspects of the glamour that we falsely see as reality, and which covers the truth beneath. And that truth is the pattern that interconnects everything, everywhere, and always. We find the term seeker needs to be updated to troubadour. I have found. We have learned how to see clearly. That word troubadour is a French word, which means I have found. Is that your understanding, Sabine?
I didn't know that it meant I have found it over. I relate troubadour to music and people who do speak their mind and convey some strong messages, but not. I didn't know. No, interesting.
It's like, you're quite right. Of course, that's what a troubadour is. But at the linguistic roots of
Mhm.
the word in French, isn't trouver is to find, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So
And I think it's an old French word anyway, so it might have changed through
yeah,
time, huh?
that's what I'm thinking. It goes back
Yeah.
a few hundred years, but
Yeah.
the troubadours were around in around 1200, I think, about that.
Yeah, Middle Age, I think. Yeah.
They continued, but
And later on, yeah.
they were around at the earliest days of the Inquisition, apparently, because the Cathars in
Yes.
the Languedoc were the first target of the Inquisition, and the
Mhm.
troubadours would offer hospitality to the Cathars when they were fleeing the Inquisitors. So the troubadours were on the side of the Cathars. And interestingly, much later, there was one place in Europe where you were safe from the Inquisition, and the troubadours all ended up there, and that was Scotland.
Uh-huh.
And interestingly, even more interesting, in Scotland, the unicorn was celebrated on the royal coat of arms. That's why the English coat of arms is the lion and the unicorn. Because the unicorn came down from Scotland when those two countries merged. So the facility that we have of reading the signs gives us the possibility of getting it wrong, doesn't it? The signs are not proof. You haven't got documentary evidence. They're written in such ambiguity that you're going to interpret them your way, or you can't know any meaning of it at all. So the interpretation of a sign is a co-created event. It's the sign and the interpreter. And remembering that we're studying now the fourth degree of the expression of mastery, and therefore the method by which we gain mastery, it comes down to interpretation, doesn't it? That's what we're saying. If you actually read a situation the way that suits you, then you create your life that way. If you read a situation in a way that doesn't suit you, you create yourself to be a victim instead of a master. And here's the litmus test. All of the signs that you get in life that are happening all of the time, and you can see whatever you choose to see around you. But whether you interpret them in a positive or negative way is the litmus test of mastery. Those people who are inclined to see the glass half empty, the pessimists, will move themselves away from mastery. You got to start again, have another try, But those people that have learned every situation can be turned to their advantage. The glass is always half full. There's always a silver lining to every cloud. Every interpretation can be suitable to my purposes. That attitude to life is the technology of mastery. That's how I would see this. It could be that there's nothing more significant in the whole of the time we spend together in the years ahead than this wisdom. I think this is it, to be honest. I think this is the difference between the winners and the losers, the masters and the slaves. You just read the signals the way you want to.
It is interesting. It seems so relevant for astrologers anyway. I think about how many times I talk to people and it's like, a Saturn transit and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, if you go in with that attitude about the Saturn
There you
transit,
go.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what you're going to get, you know? And
Sure.
it's like, just the difference of how you can look on the bright side. It's like, yeah, okay, you're going to be working, but like, you know, the mastery that can come with the Saturn transit, or the, you know, so it's always like that push of like how you can interpret these things in a different way. And it really changes the way people experience them.
And I
Completely
think
changes.
that is our function as astrologers, to turn people away from their pessimistic, heavily laden negativity towards something which is positive. Transits typically are not welcome. Nobody looks forward to a transit. They don't consult a transit because they've got this positive expectation coming up that they'd like to make the most of. You never get clients who are coming for that reason. How can I best use this transit in a positive way? That's not what happens. You know, generally speaking, everybody's inclined towards worrying about the future.
Mm-hmm.
I don't give them any chance to do that. You know,
Yeah.
I'm going to do a Pluto square sun transit. Oh my God, might as well commit suicide now. You know.
Yeah. No, the conversations on Pluto transits.
Say that kind of thing sometimes. You know, they come with this grim expectation. I said, "Are you consulting me on painless methods of suicide? Are you? You know, get it out of the system. You know, that grim humor." But it's not only at key moments like Pluto transits that we need to do this. It's every day. You know, every moment. You know, we walk the path of mastery when we are being optimistic, when we are strong of faith, when we are turning away from pessimists. That's a daily challenge, moment by moment, really. And that's the path of mastery, and it's continual, you know. In her very, very strange way, my mother had a strong positivity about her. I had a motorcycle accident when I was 16, and I destroyed my motorbike. I mean, I was nearly killed, and I was in a terrible state. I'm a 16-year-old having to go through all that. You know what she said to me? The first thing she said to me, "Well, at least you didn't break your glasses." I broke my leg, you know, I broke my heart, I broke my bike. At least you didn't break your glasses. It's only now looking back I appreciate that positivity. All right. So we come to Capricorn 30, and this is where we've got the mystery of mastery, and we're seeing what we're going to do with it. This is progressing to the next stage. This is a stepping stone towards using it. And we have this very controversial Capricorn 30, a secret business conference. Small groups of people secretly direct the course of history, the highest level of social influence. In the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Great power comes when we can see what others do not see. We can grasp opportunity, avoid calamity and inconvenience, influence people, and make sound decisions for ourselves. A group of highly awakened individuals together form the ruling executive power over the world affairs, notwithstanding the rise and fall of political fashions, nations, and economic blocs. These can see what the masses do not see. Two sides must exist of this phenomenon. The dark aspect is revealed as a satanic elite that selfishly controls the wealth and laws of the world. There is also a hierarchy of light beings, equally powerful, yet focused on keeping open the path to freedom and complete realization. We need to choose which group to offer our attention. Accepting the need for high-level management of collective affairs. The life lesson is to seize opportunity. So here we have what happens when we can see that hidden message in the aviary. We can see it, and then we can interpret it positively. And those two things together gives us the possibility of controlling the masses, everyone. We get to be part of the ruling elite. And we all talk, I mean, I don't say we really, conspiracy theorists talk about these guys who have billions of pounds and do naughty things behind closed doors. It must be the case that they are mirrored on the light side. There has to be that. That's the nature of reality that the yin yang symbol shows us. The dark and the light are in polar relationship. So it is not much known that that's taught in Sufism, that there exists this hierarchy of light beings, and they have what they call conferences of the birds, actually. I don't suppose you've heard that phrase, but the kind of history of Sufism includes a very long period of time when they were the dominant force in the world in terms of wisdom. It wasn't until the Renaissance that Europe got to be clever, whereas in the Middle East, that there was a lot of development of science and knowledge. Medicine was pretty strongly practiced in the Middle East long before it got to the West. And these guys that were keeping alive that knowledge were very often Sufis. And then they were on, you know, they traveled a lot, they had caravans, and they got to talk to each other. There were universities, and, you know, it was a very active, positive approach to knowledge at that time. And it is said that the Sufis would communicate with each other telepathically at certain times and make decisions about what needed to be done. So, you know, they just meditate on the full moon or whatever it might be, and then some guy would go off and donate €1,000 to the local sports club and say, I want you to build another football pitch, you know. And you think, well, what's that got to do with anything? But they were able to operate on this level of the what's called the butterfly effect. So you put a football pitch here, and it addresses the problem of political corruption 1,000 miles, 10,000 miles away. You know, they kind of worked on this very subtle level, and it is said that is still going on, perhaps in a different way. Who knows if it's true or not? I'd like to believe in it. Who knows? We might be part of it. You never know, do you?
Can I ask something about this symbol? Going back a little bit in your explanation, you said this is where seeing the message and interpret it gains form or power. But this sort of takes me to a lot people that are alike, they join, right? Because there's a conference of people who can do this, who can see the image and interpret it, and they all get together. So what is it? Or is it both? Or is it just the combination of these two within you, and then or you finding people that can do the same thing?
Well, I think on the first level, it's that you combine with other people on the grosser level, shall we say. And we hang out with people that want to do the same as us, as you say, a consonance of interest. And we're doing this right now. This is a secret business conference. You know, we're doing exactly that thing. We don't call ourselves a business conference, but we're actually conferring to develop a group consciousness of light. And when we're on the button, we produce a force that balances the negativity of the world to some extent. That's what I've always believed. And there's a lot of it going on now, isn't there? There's a lot of groups doing this kind of thing in all sorts of places in the world. That was not true when I was born, for example. By no means was it true. It's a phenomenon of the age. But what Anna's asking is whether or not we can internalize that as a personal experience, if I've understood you correctly. Yeah. And I think that that's probably the higher wisdom. Yeah. And it's probably more difficult. It's like, can you actually reach group consciousness alone? And the answer must surely be no, but in fact it's not. It's yes, you can, but you need to be a master. You know, this is the nth degree of mastery, isn't it? And if you're a master, then that's exactly what you do. You form communion with other beings who are not in your immediate proximity. They're not in the same room as you, but you're in communion with them. I'm not sure where you guys go with your meditations, but sometimes I visualize myself to be a part of a group of, I don't know what you'd call them. I call them the Council of Elders. And they're not of this world. They exist on a different planet at a different time even. And I'm just a member of that group and its representation on planet Earth at the moment. There's a part of my spiritual self that considers itself to be an ambassador for this other realm. So, that's how you would do that. You would use that method of visualization, seeing yourself as a part of a group and moving into group consciousness. When you do that, that would have the same effect. Is that an acceptable answer? Does anybody else do crazy meditations like that?
No, but I'm going to start to. I'm going to join your Council of Elders. Look out for me next time.
Say that again, Carol.
I said I'm going to start to now. I don't, but now I'm going to join your Council of
Yeah, me
Elders.
too,
So
me
take
too.
look out for me next time. I like that image.
Make it real. Find that. Find whatever makes you feel, yep, that's it. This is not nonsense. Something that you're actually able to believe in more than you believe in daily ordinary life. It's a lot easier as you get older to change your focus of attention away from the importance of this world towards the importance of what's coming next. That's obvious, really, but what the Sufis do is they suggest that you do that earlier, that you die before you die. Yeah, Christians say that as well, don't they? In other words, you try and do whatever you're going to do in this world to the point where you can not care very much about success and failure in this world anymore, and then you identify with what comes next, and you start investing in that future beyond death. And if you can find a way to do that and connect with who you will meet after you die, then you can do this exercise, this meditative exercise, in a way which is not just conceptual. It becomes a feeling. And I have some sort of memory or imagination of where I came from and where I go back to after leaving the world of lies, as the Sufis call this place. And I just connect with that now, so that road back is easy and obvious. I want to just move from here to there without too much hassle. So, what do we think of Capricorn expression of mastery? It makes sense to me. Does it make sense to you? All right.
It's interesting. It's not what I would expect from a traditional, most of these ideas are not at all what I would expect to go along with the word mastery. It's just, it makes a ton of sense. I think that it's.
So that's good. That's exactly what we want to do. Is what's different about our concepts of mastery traditionally compared to this for you? What's the major difference?
Well, that it's usually so material, so materialist, and concrete about kind of like worldly success, I think, is the traditional way that we think about it in terms of like becoming the master of something. Or so I don't know. I think here it's just a different. I mean, so that's my, I don't know, my traditional conception of it, I guess. Becoming the best in your field is competitive in some way.
The word master is used to describe a slave owner and such people, sure, which is where you're coming from there. But it is also used within the spiritual frame, isn't it? You have spiritual masters, and so on. And martial artists who become masters are understood to be a blending of those, the physical world and the spiritual world. And that's another level of mastery,
Because it's such an emphasis usually on hierarchy. And sure, here, okay, we get to the final point also is, okay, secret business meeting and stuff. So there's some sense of like a hierarchy, I guess. But you'd expect the whole thing to be about that, like stepping up, I guess.
Yeah, there is most assuredly a hierarchy within Capricorn and a hierarchy within the discipleship principle. And the master has an obedient student, and this is the traditional way of doing it, very unpopular nowadays. And yet that's actually what leads to mastery. You can't become a master unless you serve a master. You can't learn how to be a master unless you learn how to be subject to master's will. It's just not possible.
Yeah, but these 5 degrees aren't describing that process.
Not all of them, but the pilgrimage is certainly like that, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And to some extent, the business conference, although by that time you're collectively the masters of others, so that you're on top of the heap. But the pilgrimage is certainly serving a master. You don't go on retreat without guidance. The guide will tell you what to do. And the water sprite is like saying, well, look, nature's telling you what to do. Flow along with that. It's kind of, different version of the same thing. You've got a master.
For me, what's surprising is that I agree with Caroline that Capricorn has always this outlook so serious and so dry, and so everything is so dark in connection with Capricorn. And all these symbols, they are so intuitive, and they call upon something that's in you. So this kind of takes me to the master of yourself. You sort yourself out, and that's a proper path to master.
Definitely, yeah. The thing is that the images that we have been given of what Capricorn is, and what Saturn is, has come to us relatively recently. Maybe a century ago, it was kind of a bit different, maybe a bit longer than that. But Saturn is associated with Saturnalia. If you go back 2,000 years, there was god Saturn was associated with party time, wasn't it? Saturnalia was just do what you want, have fun, don't worry about the rules and regulations. That's Saturnalia. And yet Saturn is all about rules and regulations and morality as well, which checks out. I mean, if you've got the imposition of that, then the same principle must be expressed in reverse. So that's what we're doing at Christmas time now. We've got this lie going on at Christmas that we're celebrating the birth of Christ and it's all for the children. Yeah, it's just not true. We buy a huge amount of alcohol and food. So that's actually what Saturn's about. And to associate Capricorn with only that one side of Capricorn, with only that one side of Saturn, which is the heavy, burdensome side, is just the negative take of current day astrologers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And who is it that woman whose name I ought to write down? I keep on forgetting her name. The best woman writer of astrology in the current era, Carolina. Jungian astrologer.
Oh,
Liz Green.
the screen, exactly. Yeah.
Green, yeah. I always forget her name. Anyway, Liz Green wrote a book, A New Look at the Old Devil. And that was a way to try and rescue our interpretation of what Saturn is. Because on the one hand, you know, in the English language, you talk about the old devil in an affectionate way. But actually, Saturn to the Middle Ages astrologers was the image of Lucifer. You know, and the earthbound nature of life, the attachment to the earth, that was the Luciferic problem. And if you look at the tarot card for the devil, you'll see there's a chain linking Satan to the earth. But if you look very closely, does anybody notice one of the qualities of the chain in the tarot card? If you look closely, and it might not be true in every deck, but in the traditional deck, Rider-Waite, for example, the chain is broken.
Mm.
That the devil is not actually chained to the earth. He's there by choice, and he wants that. And I think that's what's going on with our interpretation of Saturn. If you actually offer somebody freedom, no strings attached, you can just do whatever you want. I don't think many people would take it. I've got my work to do. I've got my relationships. I've got my home life. I've got all sorts of burdens that I need to take responsibility for. I would love to do that. What you say, yes, you know, ask me next year, but right now I have to say no. That's what most people would say, isn't it? People don't want to be free. They choose to be chained to the earth. That's why we came here, to experience earth plane reality. But mastery depends upon understanding that that choice can be reversed.
So I have a question. How is my mastery of a Mercury different from Carolina's mastery of a Sun, right? It's your Sun, Carolina. Yeah. And the North Node of Loic. So they must be different. They were working on different things, right? To master.
Well, the first symbol is different from your symbol, isn't it? The water sprite is different from the large aviary. So that's the first difference. There are 5 different aspects of mastery, and they share the water sprite, which is basically learning to tune in to the rhythms of life. You know, that's the overwhelming imperative. Everything that we know comes initially from the rhythms of the natural world. The sun and the earth have a rhythm together that gives us our daily rhythm, and the moon adds another rhythm, and so on. It's all natural stuff. And then we create patterns of behavior out of that, but it comes from the earth rhythms in the first place. And if you're not in tune with that, you haven't mastered the earth dimension. So that's their focus of this. Your focus is that there's a lot going on that people miss. There's a lot of information going on all of the time, and you have to be willing to look for that with the expectation of finding it. 2 different aspects of the mystery of mastery were discussed with the 2 different degrees.
But it also matters that it's a different planet. Like, so if your Mercury were the water sprite, it would be speaking much more to your, so your perception, your Mercury functions, right? So the way you think, the way you communicate would have that focus on mastery, versus the sun is, okay, life path in general, right? So I think there you have to get down to the signification of which planet is implicated in the degree.
I think it must be said also that Anna has sun and moon in Capricorn. So anyone with anything strong in Capricorn, or sense anything at all, will have a readiness to vibrate with that energy. So even though you might not be in that expression, if you're strong in Capricorn, as you are, you're going to be picking up on all of the Capricorn mysteries, all of them, much more readily than you would would if you didn't have those planets. So Capricorn speaks to you in all of its different ways, as it does to me, because I've got a Capricorn ascendant. I relate to these challenges and mysteries quite well.
James, how does this expression, the last of 6 in Capricorn, relate to the first expression of Aquarius? Which is balance.
When we kind of get to the top of the mountain, we've mastered the earth plane. What are you going to do? You know, you're going to go down and do it again, go for a bigger mountain. But when we get to the highest mountain of all, where do you go from that? And that's what Aquarius is actually trying to teach us, that there's a sense then that you move into identification of the species rather than the individual. In one sense, the Capricorn energy is the highest point in the chart. If you line up the houses and the signs, you get Capricorn right at the top. So it's at the top of the mountain. It's at the top of human achievement, earthly achievement. And then you go into Aquarius, which is a stepping stone into Pisces, the ocean of Pisces. So you got there, you've made it. Now what you're going to do? Well, what do famous people do that they've actually on the top of their game? The stars, you know, they've done everything, they got nothing more to do. What they do is they start adopting children and giving money to charity, and you know, that's what they do, isn't it? They sponsor.
Depends. They might take a rocket ship to space just for the hell of it. Which is a different expression of Aquarius, interestingly enough.
Is he Aquarius?
I'm saying, like, it's actually a different expression of Aquarius. I mean, so yeah, you can give it away to charity, or you can go up to space. You're still doing Aquarius once you reach the top of your game.
Sure. And that's where we go to next. And Aquarius is starting the principle of humanity, humanitarian things, thinking of the species as a whole and the development of the species. So they're inventors, they're social workers, or evolutionary. They're thinking. They're not earthbound in their thoughts.
Collective.
The collective, yeah, not the individual, but the collective. That's the whole thing. So that's where you go next, and you start with this whole idea of balance, where I and the group find some kind of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Aquarius is actually not only Uranus, it's also Saturn, the rulership. They're not wacky. I mean, they can do wacky very well, but they actually do it. They get the job done. They're effective people, the Aquarius types that I've met. What we have with the first degree of Aquarius anticipating where they're going is the Adobe mission. So a group of people that started a few hundred years previously as pretty pissed off Christians in England and Netherlands, they left Europe in order to be even more extreme versions of religiousness. And then they went even further to the West, and they said, right, well, we'll plant our religiousness in this particular wild place where only Indians live. And that's why the Adobe missions were built, not only as churches, but also as forts. That's the whole point. So you've got this Aquarius image of bringing knowledge to the native, the native. That was their intention anyway. But actually, we better protect ourselves, the Saturn sort of side of it, just in case the native doesn't sort of agree with us, you know. And Aquarius is a bit like that, isn't it? It kind of brings forward this wisdom that it thinks of as something that would be great for everyone, but ends up on the edges. They're always marginalized.